But under, I'm kidding.
I mean, it would not.
Yeah. By the way.
It's not African tea, it's a while.
Yeah. Anybody? Fully.
Which is not natural.
Yeah.
Should I just get? It's 5:30, I'll call the meeting to order on Monday, October 28th, 2024. Can I have roll call, please? Gargoyle.
Here.
Scott.
Here.
Beauregard.
Here.
Kramer. Here. Graham's here. Ready for the pledge of allegiance? The pledge of allegiance.
United States of America. One nation under God. Liberty and justice for all.
We have the consent agenda, which things that have been discussed already or looked at by the council. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Make that motion.
Then a motion, is there a second?
Of course.
Motion and a second, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We'll move on to number 7, guest and citizens forum. Is there anyone who'd like to address the council? That's not on the agenda already. All right, seeing none, we will move on to reports from staff. City Administrator Lanning.
So we had a tentative meeting scheduled for Thursday with the East Range Joint Water Board to discuss the questions submitted by the council. That has been requested to move to after elections, as all the clerk's offices are pretty swamped with elections right now, and so that'll take place after November 5th. Councilor Scott also brought up information regarding a deed grant for Main Street revitalization. Eligible entities for this are foundations, community development institutions, and nonprofits engaged in housing and commercial development in areas that there has been widespread arson and unrest, natural disasters, major closures, or COVID-19 impacts. These grant dollars must be matched at 200% of deed investment, and the East Range Joint Powers Board works closely with deed to administer those grants to local businesses. And so if there's any local businesses interested, East Range Joint Powers Board would be the contact for that.
Is that it? Yep. All right, then we have Public Works Director, Scott Singer.
Yeah, just want to let everybody know the docks are still in at this point. We'll start removing them this week in between the weather. But if anybody has any boats, any business they need to take care of on either lake, I would suggest getting it done this week because by Friday you'll probably see all the docks in. I had a few questions, people questioning me in town regarding all the construction going on, say down at Colby Ridge, out on Dorchester, the block between Lakeview and Viking. That's all subcontracted by the name of Michael, doing repairs on the natural gas line. It's not us that's doing the work. They've wrapped up 3 repairs in the past couple of weeks. They have 2 more to go and they'll be probably out of here in a couple of weeks. But everything, I spoke to them today, everything is going well and as planned. Up on the 500 block of Coventry, you'll also notice quite a bit of work going on. That's not us doing that either. That is a company boring a fiber optic line in across Kennedy Drive to the assisted living facility. And they've ran into nothing but rocks and problems. They can't bore anywhere near the gas line. So unfortunately, they've had to tear out a bunch of sidewalks and things aren't going well for them, but they're getting it done. And the repairs will be, I would assume, done soon.
All right.
As far as the missing sidewalks, et cetera.
All right, thank you. And Kevin, are you here on behalf of the fire?
Yeah.
Place of Chief House?
We got 2 fire calls in October so far, 36 year to date. Just a reminder, winter season's coming. check there's no clearance. And another thing is, I see some of the flags on the hydrants are missing from water carnival, like kids gonna have hated. So if, anybody sees any missing, just call the department and let us know, and we'll replace them. But here's for agenda.
All right, thank you. City Attorney Butterfield's gone, but we do have Phil here with us. You have anything for us?
Well, thanks for asking, Mayor, nobody knows.
Okay.
One follow-up for Becky.
Oh, sorry.
The water board postponing that, when did we, I know we talked about timeline with Jake. What was the timeline we needed to decide?
Originally, we had a couple months as they were working closely with St. Louis County getting for the Highway 100. They did receive some funding. I don't know if it's been made officially public yet for that water line, and so they will be upsizing it, and so we don't have that time pressure right now. They're looking to do bidding in spring, and so that's when we need the decision by.
Becky,
Yes.
I've got a question on that water situation. I had made in a past meeting a motion for the city to undergo the study of possibly looking at the wells.
Yeah.
Is it in order possible to rescind that? Everything, and I'm asking because every bit of information I've looked at, talking to people that are somewhat knowledgeable of water on here and whatnot, I've come to believe that the well situation wouldn't be a good thing for us to be involved in. It could be money poured on it, yeah.
Okay, you will have an engineering estimate from Bolton and Mank in front of you at the next council meeting.
Okay,
And that scope of work will include things like working on the joint powers, also working on the well system. And so at that time, you can discuss with Jake Fusco exactly what you'd like that scope of services to look like and make a motion for that at that time.
thank
You're welcome.
All right, reports from elected officials. Counselor Kramer,
Nothing kind of,
Counselor Borger.
I just want to thank everybody that was involved in the forum. That was good turnout. Thanks to the council for approving the use of the arena. And yeah. That's all for me.
Counselor Scott.
Yeah, just one quick thing, so city administrator Becky had brought up, the DE grant dollars. That's something that a resident had made me aware of, it's not something that I came across on my own. So I think just moving forward, if you find out about any sort of grants or free monies that, you know, businesses or the city could be entitled to, please reach out to the city council. Cause yeah, that could be super useful for businesses around here, so thank you for that, resident.
All right, Counselor Zarko.
I have nothing.
And the only thing I have is the chamber hosted their annual Halloween party at Haunted Trail yesterday, and we had over 100 kids show up this year, which was great. So that was, thanks to the chamber for hosting that. And that is all I have for tonight. We'll go to old business, 10.1 ordinance regarding R4 zoning, that is the trailer park.
So last meeting, the city council discussed this ordinance. I did put it on the next zoning commission agenda, and so they will take a look at any changes they'd like to make to that ordinance in conjunction with Chief Zuler and White Officer Vronsky and the city of Aurora, and they'll recommend a change to you to make.
And we're trying to keep this in line with the Aurora.
Correct. So at this time, that item is information.
And that's just because enforcement is easier for the police department and the light officer being the same through both meetings.
Yes.
All right. You visit that once we get something in the zoning, maybe. 10.2 ordinance regarding dangerous dogs.
Also informational, this draft ordinance has been provided to the city of Aurora for review. Again, our clerk's offices are pretty busy, so we'll probably have more information and a meeting after the elections take place.
I know the one we looked at was fairly lengthy, so I don't know if they'll look at trying to condense that or, you know, what needs to be in there and what doesn't, so. We'll wait and hear what they come up with as that. 10.3 ordinance regarding prohibited animals. At the last meeting, the council indicated that they would like information regarding an ordinance to allow backyard chickens in town. They mentioned the city of Ely, city of Duluth, and city of Grand Rapids permitting process. The city of Duluth and the city of Grand Rapids allow backyard chickens. Duluth also allows ducks. In Duluth, the acreage has to be no less than 5 acres to have backyard animals. There's a list of requirements in there specifically around the structure. Grand Rapids does not regulate based on the lot zoning, but instead on square feet of the lot size. And then they have a maximum of 5 chickens, and they also have dwelling requirements for their chickens. There are no current residential properties that would be eligible to have backyard chickens under the city of Duluth ordinance, as there are no lots that are more than 5 acres. It's believed that the smallest residential lot in Point Lakes is about 6,200 square feet. And so under the Grand Rapids ordinance, that owner could have a maximum of 2 chickens based on that square footage. And all properties in town may be eligible for backyard chickens if the chickens are not located within 25 feet of a neighboring dwelling. And so in your packet are 2 ordinances. The first is repealing and replacing the chapter to take chickens out of the prohibited animals. And then the second would be to allow those backyard chickens. If you want to have this as your first topic for your public forum, if you want to take public comment at the clerk's office, however you'd like to move forward with that, we would be open to doing that.
I think, yeah, it's a somewhat of a big decision, so I think talking about that at one of those forums would be useful, just to get that input from the community on what sort of changes they would want or suggest, or whether they would be for or against it.
How could the city determine the interest in it? Because if, even at a forum, if we get 15 or 20 people that show up very positive, that might be it for the whole town. How would we determine what they feel is throughout the city?
So statutory cities cannot hold referendums, so you would not be able to put it on a ballot for a vote. You can do like a public survey, a survey monkey, that kind of thing, then you're only getting the people who have access to internet. We could also publicize that our library would be able to help people fill out surveys online if they needed that help. But that is the nature of the community. You're gonna hear from the people who are very, very for it and very, very against it, and that's probably gonna be about 1% of the population.
I do like that one of the statutes said you have to have 75% of your neighboring properties agree that you had it. So even if only a handful of people came to the forum and said, yeah, I want chickens in my yard, or the opposite, that 5 people said, absolutely not, no neighbor of mine is gonna have one. I mean, I do like some of the stipulations as far as size and consent of your majority of your neighbors and stuff.
Just so you know, I did change the draft ordinance in front of you. Instead of being 75% of adjacent owners, I did change it to within 100 feet, because there are several properties that they're within 20 feet of each other, but they're not actually adjacent. They don't actually touch. And so within 100 feet, we'll get a good gauge of your neighbors.
I also like that by not knowing that the Duluth one, because we can't have any chickens in, but with Grand Rapids, with the sizing requirements, it does open up everybody to the ability to do it. It's just depending on the neighbors. It's not like you're saying only the people that live on Leeds or the edge of Suffolk there can have chickens, the rest of the city can't. It's a pretty blanket policy across the whole city.
Yeah, I think it'd be a good topic to have at one of our forums, and also just in general to collect feedback, you know, if we hear from people or people comments, just to kind of note those comments and gauge what people are thinking. So far, it was only the one person who sent the letter, but that doesn't mean there might not be other people who say, oh, now that we can, I'm gonna get those chickens.
Would you be interested in us putting together a survey to send out? It will take quite a bit of time to collect that information and get back, or would you rather make that determination after you have a public forum on it?
I think that's more in regards to lots of other issues too. I think they were doing that for other things that come up. I don't know, we don't have it right now, or like,
The survey?
yeah,
Yeah, maybe the survey could be more than just the topic of chickens, maybe we have, you know, public forum and we collect some feedback from people on other stuff and then we do a survey with, well, you know, at least 3 or 4 questions instead of just one at a time. That way, if you do go online and answer, you're covering 3 or 4 different topics instead of one every time we have a forum.
So help us kind of narrow down the procedure for having the surveys and collecting the data.
Okay. At this time, I'll consider this informational.
And then when we talk about this as our forum item, or would we wait until the survey's done?
Well, we would talk about it as a forum item, I think that's what, yeah, as a forum item, and then, collect information as to anything else we wanted to come on the survey.
Would be looking at a forum at the next meeting then, or is what is the?
You're jumping ahead of me.
Okay.
Pick a date later.
All right, so just for information, if any of the council members have any, things to add, just make sure we get that to Becky at some point, so we can make the draft of the ordinance as close to what we like as possible before we have the forum and make any other changes. We are on 10.4 council meeting rules and procedure and order. So this is for the council meeting, not the forum. The forum will discuss next.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, and so as I was taking your ideas from the last meeting and putting them into the meeting of rules and order, we were then at like 15-page document, and so I, for ease of editing, and if you wanna change things in the near future, or in the future, that way you have one for your regular meetings and you have one for your public forums, which allows a little bit more flexibility, for meetings. I think you discussed last time, or maybe the time before that, that council meetings really are a vessel to get city council business done, to get bills approved, to get ordinances passed, and that public forum would really allow the back and forth with residents that we were seeking.
So for the most part, this is the same as what we've been doing, other than guests use the guest citizen forum portion of the meeting. They don't have to list their address, that's
Correct. Yep,
just the name and the city that they're
Yep.
residents of.
yep, and the meeting part, during the regular meeting, there won't be the back and forth between council and.
And then if there was any back and forth, the mayor, or whoever's leading the meeting would need to recognize that person from the audience to speak.
Correct, yep,
So there is the possibility of it, but whoever's leading the meeting has to be the one that engage that.
correct.
That way everyone's not just shouting out things, you can actually call people out so they can say what they're thinking.
Again, I think I mentioned it more than once, but when people are talking outside of one at a time, it makes it very, very hard to hear from the owl. And usually when there's a lot of background noise, that's when we get a lot of complaints the next day about people not being able to hear the things.
So is this on the agenda to actually approve now, or is this still informational? So if we don't have any other changes, we can have a motion to approve our council meeting rules and orders.
Is there any notes from Mitch at all on these?
Not that.
I would make the motion to approve these as the council rules and procedure.
Okay, there's been a motion, is there a second?
Second.
So, second by Counselor Faber, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carried. All right, now we'll discuss rules of our public forum that we'd like to begin.
To be perfectly clear, I wasn't here last time, and so, I have a few questions that you will want to clarify in these, either send me back to make the changes or make the motion contingent on the changes. You should make decisions regarding the frequency of public forums. Are you gonna do them just prior to the last meeting of the month? I believe Councilor Scott indicated correctly that we have the East Range Public Safety Board at 4 o'clock before the first meeting of the month. Especially if that were to run long, myself and two counselors would not be able to make the public forum. And then the length of the public forum, do you wanna start with 30 minutes, go down to 15? Do you wanna start with 15, go up to 30? However you wanna have that set up. The role of the public, regarding the top part of that is the same as the other meeting notes, providing orderly meeting, equal and adequate time for review and consideration of each item. They have equal rights to all members of the public who wish to address the presiding officer, contingent on time, and provide the city council with an equal and rational approach to all decisions. The addressing of the council, again, the person will approach the podium and state their name and city. They're limited to 3 minutes each unless the mayor would like to extend that. The public forum will end at 5:30 to start the regular meeting. The applause and other disturbances are discouraged. The council will not accept any documentation handed out during the meeting. Personal attacks or inappropriate remarks will not be tolerated. No member of the public should engage in conversation when not recognized to speak. Again, it's hard to hear. And then staff will note questions of the speaker, and if the speaker leaves a phone number or address, we'll follow up within a reasonable time frame to answer these questions if directed. So, this wouldn't be a forum for the council to take action on any agenda items. It would just be a forum to have that back and forth question and answer session with members of the public. Don't think that there's anything else that's significantly different about the rest of the documents.
And I think I'd like to start with 30 minutes, especially the first couple. There might be, people come in with a lot of things they wanna talk about, and as time goes on, they like, oh yeah, we already discussed that one. There might not be as many things, then we could shorten it if we see that the need isn't there for a full 30, but I'd like to start with 30 minutes. Myself.
I would agree with that. I think 15 minutes is a little short, just considering that 3-minute rule. If someone takes up a full 3 minutes, then it's don't get that in 15, so I think starting there would be the best idea.
Clarify, we would be able to discuss items on the agenda coming up after the next meeting.
Yes, at the public forum, you would be able to do a question and answer session with members of the public. The city council could not discuss amongst themselves to make any decisions. And so if Diane came up and asked a question about the chicken ordinance, we would be able to answer that question, but the council couldn't then discuss like,
Like, what do you
I think this is a really great idea and that.
That would have to wait for the
For
actual
the actual
meeting, but we could
Yeah.
listen and answer questions, so we just can't discuss amongst ourselves.
So if I made like a list of like pros and cons for like having chickens and how like could we share that during that time?
You wait for the regular meeting when it's agenda item, yeah.
Yeah, 'cause this isn't part of the meeting, so it would violate the open meeting law if we, all of us were
Yeah.
discussing
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. And because we can't prep with one agenda, with what items members of the public might bring up, I can't notice it, so I have to provide 3 days of notice, and so,
Yeah,
if someone came up and asked a question about the Midway shelter, I can't notice that if I don't have a question.
yes,
That's why the council would be limited in their back and forth discussion.
Would we be able to take a topic brought up, and obviously I put it on that agenda, all the meeting, but request it for the next
Yep.
meeting?
Yep, definitely.
does anyone have any thoughts as to just the last meeting? It seems to make the most sense with the public safety meeting on the second Monday, so if we did the 4th Monday of every month to start with. Does that sound reasonable?
And then if there's ever any concern the council has with an agenda item possibly getting pushed to the first meeting, they could request a table until the next meeting or something like that.
Yep.
And give citizens a chance to speak on it or ask questions.
Or it could be something like the chicken ordinance, where we know there may be significant public input on that, and then, the council will get the first draft and then go.
Big decision type things waiting in time. We'll have, maybe have to sit on those a little bit, to wait till that forum if it's the last.
The other thing the council can always do is, call a special meeting. In which case, you really wanted this chickens to pass this week, you could call us, last week, you could have called a special meeting. In which case you could have allowed, the public forum portion at the beginning and then have that on the agenda section.
Yeah, if there's something time sensitive, but we really feel like we want to hear what people think on it first, we can call a special meeting. Yeah. I didn't have any other questions on it. Did anyone else have any other feedback or questions?
It's a good start to what we discussed and we can iron out the details as we go through with you, I think.
There'd be a motion to, begin then to start having the public forum.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Before you vote, I have the motion to approve with a 30-minute time frame taking place between on the last meeting of the month. And I also assume your motion includes declaring the meeting every fourth Monday until the end of the year. At 5 o'clock, okay.
Well, good, there's been a motion and a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
I have a question.
Yes.
Of course. The chicken ordinance brought this back to mind. We've got a light officer in town. And looking at the list of the staff reports and stuff, what department is he under?
Like animal control, who's supervised by administration.
Okay. Does he ever fill out reports? I've never seen one.
They come in the meeting packets.
How does he do the patrols in town? Does he have scheduled trips or does it just works off of individual
It's
calls or?
so usually it starts complaint based. A neighbor or someone or a counselor will bring up a complaint for blight. And then he'll kind of keep that property on his list. And so even once the blight is resolved, he'll go in and he'll check on it again to make sure they're keeping up with it.
What is the basis? I mean, what is considered blight then for to elicit a response from him?
So it's in the city ordinances. It is grass taller than 8 inches or gone to seed. And then there's also conditions for property, primarily around mattresses and trash.
The 8-inch grass applies to trimmings around the buildings and stuff as well, or trees. Or the majority of the grass.
The majority of the grass is cut, I think.
Going around with a ruler.
There's wildflowers for 3 inches.
Cut it down.
There's a lot of fences in town and a lot of houses that have stuff that's 3 feet tall on, you know,
Around the borders, you mean, or around the fence?
around the houses or around the
Yeah.
fences too. A lot of them in Washington.
Great, we'll move on to new business then, resolution 11.1 is resolution assessing certain parcels of property within the city of Portland.
I know I promised you an updated resolution, but there were no changes. And so the property list you see in front of you is the list for assessment to St. Louis County. It will go on their property tax rolls and they will pay it as part of their property tax. I do know that there was a question from last meeting about the trailer court and they have paid, it was a blight fine if they didn't pay that.
Okay, so they're off,
Yeah.
off the list.
So these may be failure to pay utility bills or white
Correct.
fines that they chose not to pay and they assessed to their taxes so that the city can recover those funds.
Is this going on for assessment 24, taxes payable 25?
Payable 24, assessed 23.
Oh,
All right, is there any other questions before we make the motion? I know we discussed it last month too, and since there's no changes, we'll accept a motion to pass the resolution.
so moved.
The first, is there a second?
I'll support.
Support, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 11.2 is the resolution accepting donation from the Ranger ATV Snowmobile Club.
So I was not snooping, but come by the city garage, found the cargo container, and I was just curious who it was. Asked Kenny, there was his, about her, the snowball club. And he said he's gonna get rid of it, so I told him to put the fire department first on the list. For training purposes, whatnot. And you guys had a meeting and decided to donate it to the city and so,
And to clarify, you'll be using the smoke machine in it, it will not be on fire.
no fire, smoke machine and other.
Yes, this came up with the club, moving into the new building space. So we no longer require the auxiliary space that the Conex container gave us. Everything's relocated into the new building, so. It's. I think it's about, I think it's priced about the same of what they purchased it for, and that's still the going rate for used Conex containers, so. They decided to donate, and it's nice to see the different groups working together and provide some training materials for the fire department.
Don't come in very handy. Thank you.
That's like a shipping container, right?
Yep.
All right, is there a motion to accept that donation?
I'll make that one.
I'll second.
Motion and a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
So is there anything we have signed?
No, I'll take care of it, I'll get a receipt to the club, and it's yours now. All right, 11.3, we have Suleen to discuss trees at the camp.
Thank you.
It doesn't work.
Doesn't work, so I can just talk. All right, most people can hear. So I had an incident that happened out at the campground, and it was the second week in October. Went out to get ready to bring my camper home, and a dead poplar tree had fallen down and came on top of my camper, punctured through the roof, and it was over $10,000 in damage to my camper. Went through the awning, came down the back of the camper. I have photos. I know it was a dead tree. I have pictures of it, how, where it was and all of that. I can tell it was asked that, did I report it earlier? I did not. I noted it when I got to camp in the seasonal this year, but there already were at least 3 other campers that had their campers in. So there isn't really, where are you gonna drop the trees? The trees were in the center of the loop. They've been there for a number of years. So my question is, where's the liability and where's the, who's gonna take care of the dead trees that are out at the campground? And I understand live trees and storms coming through and knocking things down. Those things happen, those are acts of God, but these are things that could have been avoided. So that's my question is, who and what is responsible for those? And also, I have a tree that was over my camper this year that I had to trim up some because it was literally hanging over the decking area where the camper sat. And so it's like, well, how do we take care of those things? Because those are trees that are also a danger of falling down onto my camper. So I had to go up on my roof and I had to trim some of those in order for them not to be coming down and hitting onto my camper. I guess that's my main point, is that it's for the safety and well-being of other campers that are there, not only just seasonals, but in general, other campers, that these trees need to be addressed, and I believe they should be addressed in the fall and in the winter, so that by the time the campers get out there in the spring, it's all taken care of. And whether it's marked and then taken care of at a later date, but it just is something that I think needs to be addressed. People love our campground. It's a great campground, and I don't want anybody else to have to experience what I just experienced as they get to the end of that camping season realized I have to have repairs done to my camp before I can use it again. I also have a campsite next year, and I went out on the campsite and checked, and there's a dead tree on the property. So I'm wondering who's gonna take care of that property, because I'm not gonna have this happen again. So I would just like the city to address it and discuss it and give some answers as to who is responsible for taking care of those dead trees out there.
What is the process now when there's, like at the end of the season, what's the process?
So, we are not yet done with camping season, and so traditionally, either campers or the campground managers report dead trees to Kenny. Because, as you know now, all the leaves are off the trees, so you can't tell if it's dead or not, for the most part. And then a couple times a year, Kenny goes out and he cuts those trees down. But again, because when it's cutting them down, the leaves are already off the trees, it's hard to determine unless they've been reported to us as dead. And so I do know that he goes through also during the year and they mark trees to be cut down. And then they cut them down over the winter. If they were reported to us.
What about the brushing? You guys brush around the campsites at all to help widen them? I noticed myself camping this year that they were starting to get pretty grown in and.
We have in the past, we've done it both ways, I mean, a lot of times when you get seasonal campers, they like to clean out and arrange the site how they choose. As Sue had stated, you know, there are some trees with, branches growing down, leaning over. Traditionally, the way our campground is set up, it's the camper backs in on the right-hand side of the site. However, seasonals, it's kind of a free-for-all, people put them in there sideways, backwards, every way they choose because of how they want their, you know, site laid out. So traditionally, we would trim little branches on the left-hand side of the site. Per se, that might rub a camper because the campsite was originally designed to only have campers on the one side backing up to the pedestal. Becky is correct, and we do, believe it or not, I mean, it may seem like there's a lot of dead trees out there or whatever. We mark and probably cut down 100 trees a year. We do it in the fall, like you say, generally this time, about deer season, we start. Once the ground is frozen, so we can get in and out of there with our equipment without rutting things up. We also go back in the spring as the trees start budding, and if we notice a tree is dead and not getting leaves, prior to campers coming in and being in the way, we try and take them down. Anytime a camper does notify us, I've had many people, you know, seasonal and weeklies included, have a concern about a tree, you know, that would say to me, what if, whatever, so we go out there, we've never had a problem taking down a tree that anybody's asked us to. Although this year we had in the same loop year, and I believe a camper in site 13 reported a tree.
Mine,
I thought you were.
no, that was 2 years ago,
Oh,
and I had one then too, so.
I was told there was a dead tree in campsite 13, but that there were seasonal campers all around it and that someone was unwilling to move. I don't know if that's true or not, that was what my staff told me.
I didn't report it,
Okay,
and I don't know, but I know there's probably 5 dead trees, at least 5 dead trees on that loop.
okay,
And they're all kind of in the center area of it. And, I did have a few years ago when I had a seasonal, I had a tree that came down and bent on over the top of my camper. And it was a live one at that time. And the camp host at that point got a hold of the city, and the city did come down and they took care of that branch so that it didn't break and didn't come down on my camper. And I get that, those things are gonna happen with live trees. But there are a number of dead trees, particularly on that route.
Yeah.
I haven't had a chance to look at some of the other routes. That was the one I've been most familiar with on it.
we're trying to cut down every dead tree that we can, I mean, trust me, I know the liability involved there. You know, that can happen
Yeah.
with dead trees, we try and take them down, like I say, a couple times a year, we try and go through the entire campground and take down what we can. We also, with liability in the live trees, we don't wanna clear cut the campground. I mean,
No.
every time, trust me, every time we take down a tree, we have a lot of nature lover type people, if you will, who walk out there every day, and every time we fire up a chainsaw, we get yelled at. So it's kind of a, you know, catch 22, why are you taking these down? You know, again, we try to do our best to appease everybody and remove any liability.
Right,
And I did, I believe you're 35 next year, I did go
Yes.
down and look at that birch tree. It did still have leaves on it the other day, however, I see the top is dead. We'll address it,
is that the one on the shoulder?
Yeah.
Okay,
I'll take care of it.
okay,
There's also one by the driveway going into it that appears in the same condition.
well, and I had a small one that came down earlier in the season, that was a dead one, and it came down, I got out there and my camp lights were pushed down to the ground, and I got over the camp post. And they came out and they addressed it and they cut it down for me, but I wasn't strong enough to even lift it up to get it off my lights, to even get my lights disconnected.
In the past, we also, a previous campground manager we had, utilized all the dead trees for wood. They were allowed to cut down and cut, split, sell the wood. And being savvy, they took it back and full advantage of it. The campground folks we have now, not throwing them under the bus, but they choose to do their firewood operation in different ways. So, you know, more of it is falling on public works again.
Yeah.
As we get notified, well, we try and take care of it.
Yeah, there's a number of them in that group, and they have been there. This isn't just the first year of the dead tree. And it wasn't a small one, it was a 7 to 9 inch tree that came down. So we did quite a number on it. So,
To Kenny's point, there is some balance there, we're trying to find a line, we don't wanna be like Nashua Campground where it's a big field, we don't wanna be
no,
like Hibbing where it's a big field and it's.
yeah, absolutely not. I don't want that either. That's what I like about our campground, is that there's privacy between the campsites and the trees. You know, I like that part of it, but I don't like what happened at all.
It sounds like they keep finding you, no matter which site you're in, unfortunately. But it does sound like we can certainly, you know, make that a priority, is make sure that loop is taken care of and when things get reported. If the posts keep track to it, people tell them,
Yeah, I just think that there needs to be some kind of a process, but, and you said like when the trees were coming on or not. When we put our campers out there at the end of April, beginning of March, the leaves aren't even on yet. So it,
And that's one thing that's changed with our campground over the years is we've extended our season multiple times. You know, traditionally it was open from opening up fishing season to Labor Day, and now we're going from March until November. It's getting
Yes.
harder and harder for us
Yes.
to find that balance of
Right.
when there are campers in the site.
right, and I don't know if it's. You know, it wouldn't have done I didn't feel it would have done any good to report anything, even when I saw it at the beginning of the season, because there were so many campers already out there and set up. It's like, where would they drop these trees anyhow? So you take your chance that they're gonna stay where they're supposed to stay.
Police report it anyway. We do have a bucket truck from time to time. We can sneak up in with the bucket truck and cut it from the top down in small pieces. You know, we've had to do it before, so
Okay,
if there's any question, please let us know.
Or nothing else we can market and get in the winter, something like that.
yeah, I mean, yeah, there's several of them on that loop in particular that have been not taken care of, so.
And maybe we could post the process like in our office, just so people that has their community.
Do you prefer that people call you directly at your office to report things like that, or?
Either that or the campground. They contact me multiple times a week for different things. I'm sure if they were letting on the situation, they'd let me. Yeah.
to readdress those, and unfortunately, it doesn't change your situation. with Your
It
camper.
doesn't, but I just want to go forward, but I don't want this happening to anybody else.
Yeah.
And I don't want it happening on somebody's tent with a child in there, you know, something like that either. You know, I was fortunate we went in there, and it could have been a whole lot worse. And so I appreciate you considering and marking, and I just think that somehow there needs to be a little bit more monitoring about where those dead trees are and get them marked early and get it taken care of. And I realize too, fall and winter is when that pretty tough to do it. Well, especially in seasonal sites, we can't. do
Yeah, they get in so early and they stay so late, but
Yeah.
there's still a window that I'm sure we can try to,
Yeah.
make sure we get those.
In particular with that, so thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
And as far as brushing goes, I'm sure it's not before, but Snowmobile Club, I'm sure would be happy to
Yeah,
let you guys use the equipment for brushing.
Yep, we worked together before in a couple areas down there.
When they have their larger one, they can get pretty high for as far as clearing lower branches and things, so.
For a fee rate.
No.
Does the labor come with it or just the?
Sure, if you need an operator, provide the light for it.
All right, here we go. Move on to 11.4 then, discussion regarding the East Range coordination. So at the last East Range Joint Powers Board meeting, a couple items. Specifically adult use cannabis, trails and capital projects came before the board. They are requesting that each local government unit discuss that in their entity and see how you'd like to move forward with a more cohesive East Range plan to leverage those local dollars and utilize economies of scale for those projects. We already do that for housing. And so we're already part of the housing coalition that is looking to attract developers to the area. And so these are a couple more topics that the East Range Joint Powers has identified as something that we probably all want to be on the same page at from the Waback to White Lakes. So it's just like a general rough discussion. Are you thinking you'd want elected officials to be part of those discussions? Do you want staff to be part of them? Are you more interested in citizen task forces? And what information or thoughts do you have on the topics initially? I'll let you know, probably Aurora will probably have council and staff involved. Waback is a very citizen-driven town, and so they'll probably move towards citizen task forces. And so whatever your initial thoughts are, if you would, support adult use cannabis, and I think everyone supports trails, and then what we can do for capital projects, what kind of information would you like the East Range Joint Powers Board to investigate for those?
So the whole idea of this is to try to get these communities on the same page with certain
Correct.
objects, items. Why end at Waback? Why not extend to Gilbert? At least their police department is overlapped there.
Because they usually operate with Virginia Outlet and Mountain Iron, like the Quad Cities Trail System. The East Range Joint Powers Board is the 4 communities, so that's probably the angle that the conversation is shaped from. And it doesn't mean to say that they won't look into these other ordinances or other ways they're doing their policies on this, and we might say, hey, here's what Gilbert's doing, here's what Evelyn is doing, you might model ours after, but yeah, the East Range Joint Powers Board is members of the 4 communities, so they're just focusing on the East Range, but especially if we have people involved, I think we can let them know, we'd like to see what other neighboring communities are doing. To have that information when we decide what we want to do. I'm not sure about Waback, but I do know Aurora passed a moratorium on adult use cannabis. When that came before this council did not pass a moratorium on adult use cannabis, and so there's just a difference there.
And the moratorium, when we discussed it, it only valued a year.
Exactly, yeah, and the state hadn't had any regulations in place, so they weren't gonna be in the opposite end. Then we had no interest, either like people weren't trying to fill out permits or do anything, so we thought it. No need to have something if we're not working on it now anyways.
Just repeal it later.
Yeah.
Figure out what states do.
Have they done like hybrid type where they have citizen task force, but then that's kind of led by council staff people?
Waback does that. Their task forces usually have a staff member and or a council member who sit on those task forces and then report back, kind of like our committees are set up, the garden committee or that kind of stuff where you attend those meetings and then report back.
So I guess in my mind, I'd be more in favor of that, but like the trail pieces, that we have a whole club dedicated to the trails where the council member that is a part of the club, we could have like, I don't know, I just think more community input in respect to like things like trails.
Trails extend beyond ATV, so it's also the Sabi Trail, bike trail.
Yeah, so the bike trail is looking to expand here. I do know that in speaking with a group of volunteers for the CCC building, they are interested in having the trail go through that building, and so as you're biking from Aurora to Mid Lakes, Mid Lakes to Aurora, you're utilizing going through that space. Things like that, the trail between Wauk and Gilbert hasn't been completed, and, you know, that it's, like Stuart was saying, there's a lot of trail potential. I know the township's interested in a paved trail heading out towards Twin Lakes.
And there is kind of committees already created, the Trails Task Force does exactly this for the trails, they bring the mountain bikers and the road bikers and the snowmobilers and ATVers all together. So we can try to unite some of our goals or share spaces like trailheads and things like that.
So would it be a bit redundant if they're already addressing the
That's
trail?
kind of what I'm leaning towards.
Yeah,
A lot
I
of
think
this-
our own committee would be redundant, they already have a committee
Right.
for that. I mean, some of these things might be best suited to have the public forum and get the input, and then our, whether it's staff or council members, go to these, you know, meetings and hear the stuff, but bring the information we get from the community. I mean, especially capital projects, I think that's important for staff or council to be aware of, you know, what other capital projects or sharing the funding that we could do.
And then we already kind of do the East Rain ordinances with sharing the police department being Aurora and Mid Lakes, we already try to match up ordinances and lights and things like that. So really we're just adding Water, but Water has a different police force, so.
Yeah, and they're a charter city, also, their operations are a little different.
And I think maybe these topics are better suited for a forum or a survey, you know, how we're saying, let's send out a survey, have some of these questions on there. And then they might be, would you like to serve on a committee talking about trails in our area? And if they say yes, then you could certainly involve those people with the Trails Task Force and make sure they're going to some of these meetings, or they can join the other marketing committee that, you know, members of each town are a part of. I mean, these are things maybe a committee member would like to sit on and get information.
But rather than leave it solely up to the citizens, I think it'd be a good idea to have a council member at least.
Yeah, I'm just saying, we're already involved in a lot of these as either counselor or as staff. You know, like I attend a lot of these meetings already, Becky attends some of these meetings already, so to set up this, the whole separate group of people does seem a little redundant.
Procedural question then, would you like me when I post information on the meetings, would you like me to put down? You know, the council is particularly interested in hearing opinions on adult use cannabis and chickens. So the public, you know, the two important things to know. And so,
You can have both in your yard.
Together.
Greenhouse grow all day.
so, you know, the council is particularly interested in hearing information on these topics. If you are interested in them, submit your comments to me prior to the meeting, if you can't make a meeting or come to the meeting to discuss them. Is that to kind of guide those forums? Is that something you're interested in?
I think so.
Yeah.
And they can certainly bring their own
Yes.
idea, but like these are two things that we're talking about right now that would affect a lot of people in our town. So I think those are two good ones to start with, you know, or a topic of your choosing, you know, we can always tell them. Okay, I will add that in. They're done. We're already adding questions to our survey.
Were you at one of these meetings then, where they brought this up, or
Yeah, it was at the last joint powers meeting.
did they provide any more data on, that you think it's a good idea, or you think it's redundant as well, or?
They just wanted information as to how the council's felt.
I'm okay trying to align the ships a little bit, but I think we have a lot of committees that are trying to do that. Like the Snowmobile ATV Club, they're already the same club from Veggie Gilbert all the way to,
Right.
Iowa Tooth Crossing.
Well, and if we're interested in focusing on paved trails, there should be someone who's really, really interested in that on the task force to get those things done.
And sometimes it's nice to know what your neighboring city is doing, but we're all unique too in our, how we're made up and our residents. So sometimes your ordinance or your way of doing things might look a little different than the other one, but On some of these policies, especially when we share a police department, I think it's important to align some of them. If you have any thoughts, concerns, questions on that prior to the next meeting, just let me know. Not I would consider that information at this time. Alright.
One last question. Is it possible to revisit the utility billing that we did earlier as far as the amounts charged for water and sewer?
You have not yet passed your ordinance for fees,
Okay.
so that will be coming in December. Yep, we passed it in December. It's kind of a tight time frame to get it passed and then get it into the book next year. It'll be orange. And so to get it into the orange book is like a tight time frame. So, yep.
All right, if no other business, we'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
For a second,
Well, support.
support, all those in favor?
I.
Any opposed? Motion adjourned, or meeting adjourned.